The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Mrs. Jackson, and no, we're not talking about Michael Jackson's mom, is poised to testify. Plus, Jacuzzi allegations stir up the courtroom. The plot twists yet again. Hello, I'm James Curtis, and welcome to E's coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. You know, it was all smiles and waves as Michael Jackson made his way into the Santa Maria courtroom, but once inside, things got serious fast. Prosecutors argued that Debbie Rowe, Jackson's second ex-wife and the mother of his two children, be allowed to testify. Rowe, like the mother of the current Jackson accuser, Janet, claimed she was coerced into making a video defending Michael Jackson. Now, excerpts from the interview by Rowe were included in the so-called rebuttal video that aired on Fox in early 2003. Outside of the presence of the jury, here's what Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin told Judge Rodney Melville, according to the courtroom transcripts.
The facts are outlined in the People's Brief on that matter, but Ms. Rowe had virtually at the same time that Ms. was submitting to a tape-recorded interview or videotaped interview for purposes of rehabilitating the damages to the defendant caused by the Bashir documentary. Ms. Rowe was doing exactly the same thing. It was also a highly scripted interview that was being conducted. And there was the virtual identical incentive for her to do so, participate in the interview. And not just participate in the interview, but participate in the interview with enthusiasm was the suggestion in statement that she would be allowed to have visitation with her children, something she did not have at that time. Now, that was, in part, of course, an incentive for her to participate in that interview. We believe that the fact that they used the same types of scripted questioning for purposes of conducting this interview, that her performance was the same level of over-the-top type of performance that we saw from Ms. and the fact that the children were used as pawns to create that level of incentive is relevant in this case.
I just got to interject here. We do a lot of scripts when you do television. Over the top and scripting are kind of oxymoronic. They don't necessarily go together. When you get scripts, it's kind of stilted. On the other hand, that's not what I saw when I saw that rebuttal video. Now it's time for attorney Robert Sanger to chime in on this issue. Isn't it okay to make an outline and submit questions before the camera is turned on? Hey, even the Writers Guild has a hard time determining how much writing it takes to determine authorship of a script.
This, once again, is reaching. First of all, Debbie Rowe gave up her parental rights, which is a totally different situation than we have here. There's an ongoing family law matter that persists, even as we speak today, in Los Angeles over this, over the relationship and her attempt to get possibly some visitation or some other benefit from that. However, we keep hearing scripted performances, and there are no scripts. The only thing that has ever come up in this case, and will be clearly shown, if it isn't already by the time we get through, is that there were questions that were written out in advance. And anybody that does any kind of an interview for television is going to script out questions in advance, just as lawyers script out questions or question areas before they get up and ask witnesses on the stand. So interviewers script out their questions. There's nothing untoward about that. There was no scripted response to anything, despite Janet preposterous testimony on that. Everybody else will testify consistently with common sense that there was no script of answers. So it doesn't show a darn thing in that regard.
All right, we want to let you know that the judge did ultimately rule that Debbie Rowe will testify, can testify for the prosecution. And folks, that is expected to happen sometime this week. We get the shaking of the head by Sean. Go for it.
What an absurd ruling. Now, I'm assuming that this is being admitted not pursuant to 1108, but 1101B, which is that in both instances, the prosecution is arguing that Michael Jackson or his co-conspirators had the same MO or modus operandi in providing this script.
Yeah, no, let's be clear. The 1108 is the ruling, is the law under California law, the evidence code, the new so-called Michael Jackson rule that allows this prior bad act stuff to come in. Acts that haven't been proven in court, haven't even been filed as criminal charges, and certainly no convictions, but to show that this is the kind of guy that Michael Jackson is. The other ruling is a pattern
cases
ruling.
Only.
Yes.
This is a pattern ruling. And I think that the prosecution makes a very cogent argument by saying this. we're not asking about the custody battle. We're not asking about drugs and alcohol here. We're not asking about Michael Jackson's sexual proclivities. We're doing one little thing very narrow. Same time, same alleged co-conspirators. They were the people who allegedly forced Debbie Rowe under duress. That is the promise that she could see her children in order to do the same kind of over-the-top video. It's a pattern right next to each other.
But this is some tangential issue. It's bolstering her credibility about the scripting of the video. That has nothing to do with this. It's not on a critical issue in the case.
It's the false imprisonment
of the video.
Doesn't it go to the force and coercion?
But the false imprisonment is all about having these people stay at Neverland in both cases in order to make a video.
But as we know, Debbie Rowe is completely different than the mother, except in one way. She, like Gavin's mother, sold her children to Michael Jackson.
Oh, no, easy.
Fighting words.
Some people will argue that, and of course we'll argue about that as we continue. For now, former Neverland security guard Kasim Abdul backs up a story we've heard from an earlier witness, another security guard. His name is Ralph Chacon. The two former guards claim to have seen the King of Pop and his 1993 accuser frolicking in a hot tub. Now, they've both also taken money from tabloids, and both have also lost in court and lost big against Michael Jackson.
At some point that night, did you see Mr. Jackson go to the jacuzzi?
Yes, sir.
And where is the jacuzzi located?
The jacuzzi is located outside the house, in the back of the house, near the swimming pool area. There's a barbecue area, and the jacuzzi and the swimming pool area, and an arcade room on the other side.
And when you saw Mr. Jackson going to the jacuzzi area, was he alone or was he with somebody?
No, he was with the boy.
What boy?
Jordy.
And could you see how they were dressed?
Yes, sir.
How were they dressed?
They were dressed with bathing pants, but they were bareback. And they had like bathing trunks, pants that reached just above the knee.
That went down to the knee?
Yeah, like loose-fitting pants.
Next, Jackson gets out of the jacuzzi but could still be headed for some hot water.
Now, later, when was the next time that you saw Mr. Jackson?
I saw Mr. Jackson go into the bathroom area.
What bathroom area are you talking about?
It's a bathroom, maybe that's kind of joined onto the arcade room.
And when he was going to the bathroom area, was he alone or was he with someone?
I recollect that he was with Jordy.
And do you recall how they were dressed?
No, I don't recall exactly how they were dressed. My best recollection, they were in bathing trunks, but to be specific, no.
And did you see them actually go into the restroom area, or were they just walking towards that area?
I recall they were walking towards the restroom area.
We've heard this type of testimony before, supposedly the same incident, but let's not get into the cross-examination of these guys yet, of this witness yet, because it's going to be significant. They still have some significant baggage, though, both of these witnesses.
Exactly. And the fact that prosecution has to call another witness to testify about the exact same incident as before demonstrates that they have a problem with Mr. Chacon.
Oh, Sean, come on. I was going with you up until that.
No. He lacks credibility. He's got issues and problems, so they got to call somebody else to bolster him on his image. And this person has the same problem as Chacon.
Well, they've been the same lawsuit, but for heaven's sake, they're both eyewitnesses and ear witnesses.
Yeah.
If the prosecution didn't call this witness, the prosecution would then be criticized for not bringing evidence forward, and they both tell a similar
They do.
story.
Sean, you're doing so good up to that
same problems.
point. That's like saying, hey, there's a car accident, but we're only going to call one of the 10 people who saw the accident
Thank you, James.
to prove up the case. When we return, yes it is, when we return, do discarded bathing suits lead to death threats and a shocking departure from Team Jackson? You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Now, picking up where we left off with the former security guard Qasim Abdul, he says back in 1993 he witnessed Michael Jackson soaking in a hot tub with an underage boy. Abdul recalls how surprised he was by a distinct sound that he heard. Here's how he responded to questions from District Attorney Tom Sneddon, according to the courtroom transcripts.
Now, at some point in time, did you see Mr. Jackson again later that evening?
Yes, sir.
And where was he when you saw him?
He was near the back door of the main house, about maybe 8 yards or so from the back door.
And was he alone or was he with somebody?
He was with Jordy.
And where was Mr. Jackson in relationship to Jordy? Where was Jordan?
He was like piggybacking, piggyback when you put someone on your back.
Who was on whose back?
Jordy was on Mr. Jackson's back.
Do you recall what Mr. Jackson was wearing, if anything?
He was bareback and he had a towel around his waist.
And how about the child?
The child had like a towel-like robe, like a bathrobe. It's towel material. It was thrown over him, over the child.
And where were they when you first saw them?
I say 8 yards from the back door.
Okay. And did you see where they went?
They went into the house.
And did you see or hear anything at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
What?
I heard the two locks on the back door, the screen door and the back door lock, clack when someone closed it.
Now, was that anything unusual about that?
Yes, sir.
What?
I never recall Mr. Jackson locking the house. We normally go and lock the house. We go and lock the theater, lock the game room when he goes to bed.
So that's your responsibility?
Yes.
Next, the witness didn't see what happened inside the house, but he claims to have found what was left behind.
After you saw Mr. Jackson and the child enter the house and the doors were locked, okay? Did you have an occasion where you went to the restroom area that you had that's attached to the arcade?
Yes, sir.
And why did you go there?
I was securing the arcade room and the restroom area, locking them up.
And did you actually physically go into the restroom?
Yes, sir.
And when you went into the restroom, what did you see?
The lights were on, as far as I recollect.
Okay.
And the ground is like, I don't think it's like concrete. It's like cobblestone, the blue cobblestone.
Okay.
That's my recollection. And the ground was wet. And there were two bathing pants on the ground close to each other.
Now, were those the same trunks that you had seen Mr. Jackson and the child Jordan?
Yes, it seemed to be the same trunks.
And could you explain to the jury, where were the trunks in relationship to each other?
The trunks were maybe about this far apart.
You're indicating about
3
foot and a half, 3 feet?
They were this far apart, 2 feet apart, 2, 3 feet. And they were closer to the door area when you walk in.
Close to the front door, the entrance door?
Yeah, that's what I recollect, yeah.
All right, Ricky Kleeman, before we give our worthy colleague, Sean Chapman-Holly, an opportunity to redeem herself after that last bit of analysis, something occurs to me. Do folks who have certain types of accents garner more credibility in courtrooms and in public areas?
It's so funny that you say that, because I was actually thinking about it. I've often said that I wanted someone who was British to be the person who answered my telephone, because somehow they had an aura of authority. Yeah. And it's interesting because this witness seems to have so much more credibility and authority by virtue of his demeanor than Mr. Chacon. While saying that he gets to shore up Mr. Chacon, they both are eyewitnesses.
All right.
But as we're going to see on cross-examination,
you can't wait for that,
we know that he says in the past he never saw anything sexually inappropriate between Michael Jackson and any other boy. And also, I believe he brings his kids to the ranch after he says he's seen this incident. So, and of course, we can't forget. He's the loser in the lawsuit against Michael Jackson, so he has the same credibility problems as the other.
To the tune of $1.4 million.
I just wanted to add one thing. One of the reasons that these witnesses could be seen as more credible is they don't see a sexual act. It's very easy to say they do.
It's easy to make it bigger. It's easy to make it bigger.
Or at least this witness didn't see a sexual act.
Now, like the Jacuzzi incident, the next incident that Abdul describes was previously testified to by another former Neverland security guard, of course, Ralph Chacon.
Now, at the time that you saw them in front of the Peter Pan display, could you tell us what you observed? First of all, let me ask you this. Where was the child Jordan in relationship to Michael Jackson? Where were they positioned?
Jordan was standing in front of Mr. Jackson, and Mr. Jackson was standing behind him. You know, like if I'm standing here and someone is standing here, but we are both facing the same direction. They were looking at the display.
And what did you observe about Mr. Jackson's conduct and relationship to the child at that time?
When I turned, I turned to walk away. I went to ask him a question. When I turned to walk away, and on the side, I saw Mr. Jackson giving him a little kiss on the side here, and he was kind of hugging him. I just saw that maybe a couple seconds.
And then you kept going?
Yeah, I kept going.
You didn't watch what happened after that?
No.
Now, was Mr. Chacon working that night?
Yes, sir.
Once again, some outstanding acting there, folks. Now, the stakes are raised.
Now, after you testified in front of the Los Angeles County Grand Jury, did you receive any threats?
Objection. Leading, foundation.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, sir.
In what fashion, in what form did you receive threats? Mr. Abdul, there's some water up there if you'd like some water. Take your time.
Yes, sir.
What were the nature? Describe what threats you received.
People who called me at home and threatened to kill my family and me. A lot of phone calls coming to the house.
Was there always somebody on the other end of the line when you picked the phone up?
Objection. Leading.
They would stay on the line sometimes.
Overruled. You may answer.
They would stay on the line sometimes, yes. Just stay on the line.
All right, Sean?
I just want to follow up on something Ricky said earlier. She said one of the reasons to believe this witness is because he didn't see more. He could have seen more. He could have embellished. Sure. Well, isn't this the witness that wanted to testify about the Vaseline? That would be more.
That's
the
true.
court just kept it out.
That gets us back into the slew of motions brought just a couple of days ago by the prosecution. They wanted this witness to testify about having been ordered by Michael Jackson, or at least requested, to bring a jar of Vaseline out of a vehicle, I believe it was, into the bedroom. The judge said no, and that was along with the DV expert testimony not being allowed in.
Well, there's no question about the fact that this story about the Vaseline has circulated for many, many years. This is the witness who claims to have been one of the witnesses involved in going out to the car, but it wasn't admitted into evidence. What is admitted is what he says he sees, which really is not ultimately that harmful, but becomes more harmful because it corroborates Ralph Chacon.
We're going to see how it cuts when we return. The answer to that age-old question, what exactly do you do when you think your life is being threatened by a multimillionaire? I ask myself that all the time. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Let me just clarify one point. Before the break, I mentioned the term DV. That stands for domestic violence, but you probably knew that. Now, as former Neverland security guard Qasim Abdul continues to describe what happened following his 1993 testimony before a grand jury, it sounds like he took the death threats very seriously. Here's what the jurors heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
Did you report these threats to law enforcement at the time that they occurred?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Abdul, do you know what the Witness Protection Program is?
I know. I heard about it. I don't know exactly what it entails.
Did you ever request to be, for you and your family, to be put in the Witness Protection Program?
Objection, leading, move to strike.
Stricken. It's leading.
At any time, did you ever request of law enforcement protection?
Same objection.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, sir.
And what did you request?
I requested to be put in that program, the Witness Protection Program.
All right, Ricky.
Interesting bit of testimony. Prosecution wants to show through this witness how in fear he was. Asked for the Witness Protection Program. Same idea for Janet, Gavin's mom, as to why she was in fear during her alleged false imprisonment.
Yeah, and Debbie Rowe if she testifies. Now, in an unexpected move yesterday, it was announced that Brian Oxman, one of Michael Jackson's longtime defense attorneys, is no longer part of this Jackson defense team. Now, no reasons were given why, but he and Tom Mesereau were seen outside the courthouse in some kind of heated discussion, folks. Sean Chapman-Holly, it is reported that Mesereau's shaking his finger at Oxman.
You know, these are very high-tension trials. From the O.J. Simpson trial, I mean, there were constantly battles and fights going on. And, you know, we don't know the reason why, but we do know this is a high-pressure situation and tempers flare.
Yeah. Anything significant about it?
I just think it is serious because they've been friends and colleagues for a very, very long time. And Tom Mesereau is not someone who loses his temper with his colleagues, but he certainly seemed to lose it here.
Well, my catchphrase, curiouser and curiouser for this trial. Yes. Be sure to watch our exclusive coverage of the Michael Jackson trial weeknight, 7:30 p.m. We're on Debbie Rowe Watch. Will the ex-wife testify? Stay with us.